Hi there, everyone in the world. My name is Binz, and I welcome you to another video for the marvelous game that is Shapes.io. So far, over the course of 3 videos, I have been in pursuit of creating the fastest automated factory that you could build once you get to the free play mode of this game, which at the point of recording this video is achieved once you complete level 26. Now, here I've built a 4th machine that is as slow as the day. This new machine, depending on the shape you make it produce, might take up to half an hour or even an hour to supply the hub with the throughput needed to level up. So I can hear you think, right, if my last machine was able to level up in little under 40 seconds on average, then why the heck would I show off this new machine and make a video about it if it takes up to literally an hour to perform the same task? And well, if you have read the title of the video, then you'll already know. Here's the thing, on my previous video I got an interesting comment. It suggested that the quickest theoretical way of zooming through 100 levels, because that has been my goal so far, would be to prepare all possible shapes and store them in storage units, so that whenever the hub requests a particular shape, you can open the filter of the storage container holding that particular shape and output it to the hub immediately. The logic was that while the preparation of filling all the storages could take weeks to even months, the actual act of running the machine and supplying the hub with whichever shape it requests would be faster than any MAM you could build. Now, while this user and I quickly worked out that even that would be pretty infeasible because you'd have to literally place a few million storage units on the map without even considering the factories needed to supply all those storages, the comment did set in motion a train of thought in my head. It sparked within me the contemplation about the possibility of creating one single factory that contained some sort of rotational mechanism or alteration mechanism so that over time, no matter how long it took, it would eventually output every possible combination of shape and color quadrants. So I started thinking about not a make anything machine, but a make everything machine. And thinking about these rotational mechanisms a bit more, my train of thought came to a stop at the following. Would it be possible to create an MAM that uses just 4 input belts in total, one for the shapes and then one for each of the primary colors of red, green, and blue? So rather than running 16 shape and primary color inputs into the MAM, would I be able to use just the one set and, like a kind of delivery train, let it run by all the different stations, so to speak, and drop off whatever was required at that particular station? And from there, my thoughts continued to, what if I take it a step further and not just cut back on the amount of extractors, but cut back on as many buildings as possible? In other words, what's the minimal amount of buildings overall that I would have to build in order to create a fully functional make-anything machine? And well, the challenge was set, wasn't it? And the results are in. I managed to make an MAM in fewer than 2,000 buildings. Now, if we look at the numbers, I only have a total of 525 belts on the map and 1,457 buildings. So if my math is correct, that sums up to 1,982 units in total. This includes the wiring as well, because any item you place on the wiring layer, whether it be an actual piece of wire, a logic gate, or a virtual processing unit, then that item is also added to the buildings count. So, if I zoom out, then this is the entire MAM. That's all it is. What you see on screen now is all the buildings that I have in this entire map. So, how did I go about it? Do you know those Japanese conveyor belt style sushi bars where different plates pass by the tables and customers pick plates off the belts as they please? Well, I figured that the most lightweight solution for this machine might involve something similar, a kind of one-size-fits-all conveyor belt where every one of the 32 possibilities for a quadrant would sporadically pass by, so that each stacking unit could pick off the items it needed and ignore the rest. And that's exactly what I've done. So let's have a look at it. To make it a bit more transparent and more, let's say, palpable, I'm gonna cut this and I'm gonna place it here. And I'm gonna extend this belt and let it run, right? Let's put a belt reader there and a display. So you see that in iterations, you know, all of the possible shapes or all of the possible quadrants in any of the possible colors passes by this belt, runs along this belt sporadically. And the way that I did that is as follows. As you can see at the top, I start off with a very simple color mixing unit. It just mixes all the possible colors together. They're all combined onto the same output line running downwards. So you get red, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, and then white. And I decided to run that into a single double painter unit together with an omni shape that I have incoming from the right. Here is the omni shape. Obviously, I tunneled all of this to save as much on belt parts as possible. Right, so I have this this shape coming from the right and feeding into the double painter unit. However, I split this belt 3 times, and then in the third split I run a bypass belt, and that will ensure that 1/8 of the input gets siphoned off and bypasses the painter unit. So 7/8 is collected in this balancer again, and it runs 7/8 of it runs into the painter, and then 1/8 of it will bypass that, and that will enable us to also run gray shapes along this belt. Now you can also see that I have this little storage unit right here, and the reason I placed that together with the feedback loop is the following. I just started off with a very simple, just the line that ran into the painter. But the problem with this is that the belt here is so slow because the painter is not fast enough, so the belt is so slow that eventually, in the end, these paints that come from all the way from the top, which in this case is red and yellow, they will never ever make it to the actual painter, right? So I needed to come up with something. And the next thing I did was place a storage unit right here, and then did it like so that this belt would keep on flowing. But then, looking at this belt, I noticed that it would sooner or later end up in some kind of loop where certain colors would simply not pass by. So this was kind of a rotational mechanism that prioritized some colors and fully ignored other colors, right? So looking at this belt, I see, for example, that we don't seem to be getting any blue shapes, right? I haven't seen any green ones pass by either. So, okay, so there we get some blue, but I haven't seen a lot of green yet. So, this belt doesn't yet fully do what I want it to do. So that's when I came up with this split, and I'm running this. Firstly, I am running this feedback loop that feeds back into the machine, and then I decided to use another splitter that just throws away any second shape, and that way I seem to be getting a full belt with any of the potential quadrants a lot more consistently than what I had before. So that's why I did that. So now that we have a proper belt in place that provides all potential quadrants in a somewhat periodical and consistent manner, it is time to feed the belt into the stacking units. So the next thing I will do is I will get back to my stacking units that I displaced, and we will put them back where they're supposed to go. And then we connect those belts up again. There we go. So our output belt that comes from the splitter immediately runs into the first of 16 filter units, and the principle here is very simple. If the quadrant that passes is the one that's needed, then the filter will let it pass, where it will move through a storage unit, move through a storage unit, then be rotated into the correct orientation and move on to the stacker unit. If there is no match in the filter, then the shape is discarded and immediately redirected to the next filter in line. And this process repeats for every one of 16 filter units in total. And at the end of the line, if even this filter rejects the shape, then it will be thrown into the trash. So let's get back to the top of the line. Why do I need all these storage units, or why did I decide to use them? Well, the storages perform a dual role. Firstly, they are overflow gates. In case we have one particular line that's all the way backed up, like for example here, right? And then without any form of overflow mechanism, the entire production line would come to a halt, right? So whenever any of these lines is backed up so much that it reaches the storage, then any surplus is siphoned off and fed back into the delivery belt. Now, initially, I just worked with trash cans, right? Because putting trash cans here would save me these few belt parts, 3 belt parts per machine. And obviously, I was trying to reduce the amount of stuff, the amount of buildings as much as possible. So initially, I had just the trash can, but that brought me to a second issue and the second function of this storage, which is perhaps even more important than the first one. What happens if a particular quadrant is requested by more than one of these filters, right? So let's put this back the way it was, and let's create an extreme example of what I mean. For example, let's take a yellow windmill, right? So I place it 4 times yellow windmill on the layer, and all layers will consist exclusively of that. All right, so back to here. Since these filters are prioritized in order, first the first one, then the second one, then the third one, etc., I needed a system that would make sure that if more than one filter requested the exact same quadrant, then the first one in line wouldn't simply gobble them all up and leave nothing for the others. And so I reconnected the overflow of the storage with the delivery belt. And this way, as soon as the queue of the first line is completely saturated, that particular shape gets redirected back to the delivery belt and can make its way past the other filters to see if it is needed elsewhere. Now, this system makes the machine horrendously slow, so good thing that speed isn't my purpose here. The worst possible shape you can throw at this machine is one that contains the same quadrant 16 times, like we have going on at the moment. And yeah, as you can see, the first line needs to be backed up all the way before the second line can get supplied. That needs to be backed up all the way before the third line can get supplied, etc., etc. And Yeah, another thing is that as soon as you supply one machine, then these queues, they will all move up one spot and you have to start all over from the top, right? So producing a shape like this will take forever and a day, but eventually all of the queues will gradually back up so that the last filter in line can get the necessary output, or input rather. And as soon as that happens, we will produce our first final shape, and then it's back to square one because all the queues move up one spot and the priority filling or the backup filling of the queues will start all over again for the second shape, right? Now, in terms of wiring, I have nothing difficult going on. So I take the signal that's coming from the hub, and I'm going to use another shape to make it more transparent. Just a sec. Right, so I have a shape right here that has 16 different quadrants, and it will be a bit more simple or a bit more transparent to explain, a bit more straightforward. Right, so in terms of the wiring, I simply run this wire that is coming from the hub. And if you are familiar with, if you've been experimenting with your own MAMs, then I guess this right here is not very obscure for you. So I use the unstacker, and then I use shape cutters to provide 4 correct quadrants per layer, and then each quadrant moves into this filter. And before the filter, I installed a little system that would ensure that the line would get a zero signal if there was no incoming signal from the cut shape, right? So if this happens, then this signal will be put to 0, and we need that, in case you don't know, because otherwise you don't get any signal at all. And no signal at all will mean that the filter will just jam rather than start trashing everything, right? So that's why we need it. That's why I needed that. Sorry about that. Let's put this back. Well, and then the next thing I did was I ran these lines in pairs. I ran them into an AND gate. The AND gate is connected to the first to the first 2 filters, and what the filters are going to do is determine whether we're going to need this stacker in the first place, because if we don't, then these both of these filters will be placed, will receive a 0 signal, they will close, and they will bypass this stacker, collect again over here, and then move into the next step. So I then run another signal into an OR gate. Both OR gates here run into the next AND gate, and then this system just stacks for the next step, so that in the end we will be able to produce any shape, even if it doesn't have all 4 layers and or not all 16 needed quadrants on it. Okay. Now, now that we have a fully functional system that can produce any shape, a fully functional MAM, I could have left it at this, but I did want my machine to be capable of leveling up. And if that's your goal, then just getting your machine to produce the requested shape isn't going to cut it, not at this rate. You'll also need the requested throughput, which starts at 4 items per second on level 27, right? So what I did next is I feed the stacker output firstly into a filter that will check whether the shape moving through is the final product at all. And if not, immediately trash it. If it is, then that shape will be allowed to pass and it will move into the buffer. And I'm going to quickly remove these tunnels as to make it a bit more straightforward in case you don't know what a buffering system is. Right, let me just get rid of this. And I'm going to place the belts instead. Just a second. There we go. There we go. Okay, so in case you don't know what a buffer is in this context of shapes.io is a way of a kind of way of cheating the hub, or at least misleading it, in case the output of your machines is lower than the throughput that the hub requests, which obviously in this case my machine is not producing shapes at 4 items per second, right? When the correct shape comes from the MAM, I firstly direct it here on the right hand side, and just before the hub, it will move down, it will move back up again, it will move back down again, and just before the hub, I block the flow with a filter. So this entire line is slowly going to back up, slowly. If you've seen the rate at which this machine produces shapes, you can already guess how long this is going to take, right? And as soon as this backs up all the way back to this storage, then this storage, because of the overflow mechanism, because of the priority output mechanism, only then will it start outputting here, and here the same thing happens again. Shapes will move onto the priority output first. They will queue up all the way down, all the way back up, all the way back down until they hit this filter, right? So this queue will also slowly start backing up until the first shape of the storage is output on the left rather than the right. So once both queues are full, as soon as this second storage outputs a shape on the left-hand side, the movement of the shape across that belt, that will jump the belt reader, and the filters near the hub will open, and that will flush the entire queue. And that will be the case for just long enough to trick the hub into thinking that it is receiving a constant stream of 40 items per second and will be going up 1 level, right? So that is how the machine works. And now, just because I'm curious, because I haven't actually timed it, I'm going to connect this piece of wire to the hub, and I'm going to just see for funsies how long it will take to do that. All right, see you in a minute. Okay, so here we are again. I pulled up this little stopwatch I like to use. In case you've seen my previous videos, you will probably recognize it. It's the first one I could find, and it does exactly what it's supposed to do, which is time. And we're back in the machine. Now, what I am going to do is I have a little purge button right here, and if I enable it, then my system is simultaneously firstly going to clear the queue, like so, and secondly, it is going to cut the signal up so that my machine doesn't produce any shapes. Here you see it's flushing everything. Now, obviously, this purge button adds a little to my tally of buildings. Had I left it out, I would have even less buildings, especially in the wiring section. However, all in all, I am below 2,000 units in total, and I felt like that was an accomplishment. So, one piece, one unit more or less, or one belt part more or less, I don't really care that much anymore. Right, so now none of the filters are receiving any input because the purge button is pressed. And I'm going to clear these belts. I seem to have understood that there is a shortcut to do this in one button, but I don't know what it is. So apologies for that. Alright, I'm just clearing all these belts. There we go. Okay, I think that is it. I think all my All my queues are cleared now. And while this button is pressed, I can actually also hook up the system, and the machine will not yet fully start producing the shape. So I can simply hook up the line, but the machine is not yet started up, let's say. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, I seem to be at an FPS of 60, which is extraordinary. That hasn't happened before in my experience. Whenever I started my screen recording software, I was always a lot lower than 60 frames per second. So yeah, we can start up the timer. So I'm going to press this button, the unpurge button, so my machine will start running, and we're going to start the clock, and then we'll see how long it takes just to go up this one level, just for curiosity. Here we go.
The only choices that I own will leave me troubled and alone. I need to find a way back home. I left them all behind. For all I know, I'll be damned. Who knows, I can't find who I really am. I don't know what the road ahead supposes. Sure, I haven't been too kind, but only one thing on my mind, those of roses. Maybe someday I was once where the roses from home. I am tired from walking this road I've been on. Can't wait to see the end of these weary someplace I've roamed all alone. So one day, once again, smell the roses from home. The roses from home. Distant and obscure, like an illusion of calm reluctance towards my bittersweet recall. The roses from home, so elegant and pure, like an injection to my soul. A drug that's bold to take its toll. It scars my rise and it will cause my fall. I turn my back on all with both resolve and regret. My stars haven't as of yet properly aligned. I face whatever trance this trailing closes with undetermined peace of mind, seeking wish I could be home, home, home,
So we are at a little over 20 minutes and we can slowly start to see the cube backing up to almost to the storage. And as I explained before, as soon as it does and the first shape hits the belt reader right here, then the system will be flushed and we will go up exactly one level. So just a bit more. And there we go. So it took us 21 minutes to clear one level, and now the second shape is being produced. Now, while it took 20 minutes to get to that one level, now it's probably going to take even longer, because you can still see that we have these cues right here, and they're going to have to be flushed first before we can produce the first correct shape. Now, I don't think I'm going to wait and sit and wait around for that, because my estimation will be that it will take around half an hour. And if you use a shape that, as I said before, uses a lot of the same quadrants, then probably this will increase to about maybe an hour, maybe two. I haven't tested this, and frankly, I don't have the patience to test it. So this was just a fun experiment for me to do, because as I seem to remember saying in one of my previous videos, there is something about this game, something about shapes.io that just keeps pulling me back. Whenever I tell myself, I think I've done everything with this game that I wanted to do with it, some voice in my head just calls me back to this game, and I start thinking about a new challenge that I could do, like in this case with the most lightweight machine that I could build. Now again, I am at 1,900 something buildings, and I would like to extend the challenge over to you. If there are viewers watching this who are Shapes.io players themselves, I hereby challenge you to make a lightweight machine in as few buildings as possible. And in order for it to be, a valid contender, the conditions would have to be that it can handle any shape from 1 to 4 layers, and the shape in question should be able to be missing quadrants as well. And it's supposed to be able to level up with a reasonable throughput. So let's say like it should be able to handle anywhere between 4 and 10 items per second in order to level up or something, right? So I challenge you, have fun with it, have a go at it. And as I said before, I could cut away some belt parts, some units, if I got rid of the purge button and that entire mechanism. I have these little screens right here that have some indications on it. So I think overall, if I could slim this machine down with another, let's say, 50 items or something, 50 units. So let's say if you manage to get to 1,750 or something, I would really want to see how you pull it off. So just a fun video with a quirky challenge that I set for myself. I hope you had fun watching, and in case I do another video about shapes.io, I hope to see you then and there. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.